Step into a world of romance and mystery with Tamora Rose. Today we're reading chapter 27 of Child of the Wind. For several minutes, Jett said nothing, though he did rub her back in what he hoped was a comforting fashion. He wasn't quite sure why she was crying and was surprised that she shed tears at all, but he wasn't about to ask her to explain what she was sobbing. Eventually, her tears did slow. Canace hiccuped and searched for the handkerchief she didn't have. Jett, who did have his, passed it to her and watched as she wiped her eyes and her cheeks. "What was that about?" he asked gently. Canace shook her head. "I can't help you if you don't tell me," and he did want to help. With a sniffle, she handed his handkerchief back and tried to find the words. "It's just, I don't know. I've never been away from Duncan for more than a few days. Now I might never see him again." Jett couldn't help but smile. "That's just silly. He's sure to visit us at Barsland before he returns to Scotland. He told me as much." "And after that?" she asked, her voice a little shrill. "What if he never comes back? I know he said he would visit twice a year, but things happen. He might not be able to." There was that, and Jett didn't have an easy answer. "I suppose all girls feel that way when they leave home to marry." She nodded, but still looked sad. "I feel very alone." A little offended, Jett tightened his arms around her. "I'm right here." That made her chuckle. It was a little silly to feel alone when she was wrapped in her husband's arms. Blinking away the last of her tears, she snuggled against his chest and inhaled his scent. There was something intoxicating about this man, her husband, and she couldn't pretend not to appreciate it. Feeling his young bride relax in his arms, Jett held her closer. When he heard her inhale deeply, he moved one hand to cup her hip. When she only snuggled closer, he started to massage that hip. At her soft sigh, he moved his hands from her hip to the apex of her thighs. "Is that all you think about?" she giggled. Then she gasped as he applied just a little pressure. "With you, absolutely." His hand crept upward, skimming over the thin fabric of her gown on its way to its goal. When his hand closed over its target, Canace gasped. She was nearly lost in his touch when his fingers unlaced her gown. "What are you doing?" she gasped, grabbing his wrist. His smile was both wicked and gentle, if that was possible. "Remember your promise? The one you made this very morning?" When she looked at him in confusion, he reminded her, "You'll remain uncovered when we are alone." She glanced around with great uncertainty. "But we're outside, and on the back of a horse." "We can't. We're alone," he insisted. "No one will see." The very idea made her nervous, but he was insistent. Despite her hand on his wrist, he managed to pluck open the delicate laces and part her thin gown. Because she wore nothing beneath her gown, her flesh was laid bare before his gaze. Canace blushed, highly embarrassed and just a little worried, but she didn't try to cover herself. She did turn her body into Jett's to better hide her naked flesh. Jett chuckled and nuzzled her hair. "We're alone, lovely. No one but me to see you." "Someone might come," she whispered. Since he wasn't going to talk her into a more relaxed mood, he thought he'd tease her into forgetting herself. As they rode towards Barsland at a steady pace, he allowed his hands to roam. He was tempted to ease her skirt up above her knees, but she was still too shy to allow such things when they were out of doors. So he confined himself to the areas he could touch, and soon she was breathing hard and squirming on his lap. By the time they reached the small grove they'd once spent the night in, both of them were more than ready to resume their physical relationship. Canace was even willing to let him make love to her in the privacy of the grove. When Jett dismounted and reached up for her, she trembled with excitement. He lifted her down and she wrapped her legs around his waist as his lips met hers. Abandoning the horses, he carried her across the grove and laid her on the soft grass, his lips never once leaving hers. His hands roamed over her body as she gripped his broad shoulders. When he finally lifted his head and grinned, she expected him to utter something sweet and romantic. "Time to eat, lovely." With those words, he was crawling to his feet and moving back to the horses. Canace sat up, practically panting, and stared after him incredulously. She couldn't believe he meant to leave her like this. When he returned, their new meal in hand, she glared up at him. That wasn't fair. Settling himself beside her, he grinned. "I'm in as much discomfort as you are. But not yet." "Why not?" she whined as she writhed against him. "I feel fine. I really do. I want us both to need it so much we can't wait." Her stomach growled and he grinned at her. "Besides, you're hungry." "I am not." Now he laughed outright. "You are quite the little liar, you know." She did know that, no better than he did, so she said nothing. "Eat," he instructed, his smile still firmly in place. Since she really was hungry, she didn't argue further. As they ate on the soft grass, she couldn't help but notice his eyes straying to her exposed breasts. Though she was still a little shy, a little unsure, his attention made her feel beautiful, and his insistence she remain uncovered made her feel desirable. It was a heady combination that left her trembling. His eyes were dark with his own desire, giving her hope that they'd resume their loving shortly. As they finished their meal, however, he gathered up the remnants and the horses and gave her a sharp look. "Come," he called. "I want to make Barsland well before nightfall." Disappointed, but not entirely surprised, she climbed slowly to her feet, adjusted her gown so she was more comfortable, and wandered over to his side. Her dejected look made him smile. "Soon, lovely, I promise." His voice was husky with his own need, proving he wasn't immune to her charms. Well, if he could wait, so could she. Canace tried to smile as he lifted her onto his horse and mounted behind her. The wind picked up as they left the grove, causing Canace to shiver. She wasn't necessarily cold, not yet, but she would be in time. Turning her body into his, she tried to stay warm. Jett felt her shiver against him and pulled her closer. "Lace yourself if you're cold," he directed. "I don't want you to fall ill." "I'm not cold and I'm never ill," but she did cover herself and snuggle closer. "Do you lie deliberately, or did lies just slip out?" There was no animosity in his voice. He was genuinely curious. "What do you mean?" She knew what he meant, of course, but she was nervous now and not inclined to admit it. Jett decided to explain. "Every time you feel vulnerable or weak, you lie about it. But there's nothing wrong with a woman being vulnerable." "Would you say the same of a man?" she snapped. "Of course not." Then he grinned. "Of course I wouldn't have married you if you'd been a man." That made her giggle, but she sobered quickly. I don't like being vulnerable." "Unless it serves your purpose," he clarified. Canace opened her mouth to say something, but closed it almost immediately. He was right. She cried when she needed to, shrieked when she thought it might serve her, and generally did what she had to in order to get her way. A woman needed some tools in this life, but some men didn't appreciate or understand it. "You don't seem irritated about it," she ventured. "A woman being manipulative? Let's just say it's rather expected." She wasn't sure she liked that, but since she'd been a prime example since they'd met, she wasn't exactly in a position to argue. Besides, men were bigger, stronger, and had all the power. If a woman couldn't manipulate the men in her life, what did she have? The question hung in her mind as they drew even closer to their new home. She wasn't prepared to be a wife. Duncan had never taught her anything that might prove useful in dealing with a husband. What was she supposed to do? Let him have his way all the time? As his hand slid inside her bodice, she realized she was letting him have his way. But she didn't mind him touching her. She even liked it. Maybe she was overthinking the whole thing. She might not love him, but she liked him well enough. Perhaps she should just enjoy herself and deal with any problems as they arose. Decision made, Canace relaxed and enjoyed his attention. It was just before the dinner hour when they rode through the gates of Barsland. Canace still cuddled in her husband's arms. Her gown was once more respectably fashioned, though it clung a little too closely to her lush curves. Since Jett didn't mind, Canace decided she didn't either. Quite the gathering had assembled, probably alerted by the sentries who had spotted them a good hour ago. The new steward, his wife, and at least 20 other servants were lined up along the cobblestone drive, clearly waiting to greet their new lord and his lady. Seeing them, Canace sighed and tried to rein in the desire still burning in her belly. She wanted her husband to take her to bed, but he had responsibilities now as the Earl of Barsland. Though she didn't like it, she could respect it. She could resign herself to it. And so she was surprised when he reached up for her, swung her into his arms without letting her feet touch the ground, and strode into the manor without acknowledging anyone. It wasn't until they were very nearly at their bedchamber that she found her voice. "But everyone is waiting for you." "Let them wait," he replied. "I have plans for you." As he kicked open the bedchamber door, Canace decided marriage might suit her if he would devote all his time to her. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this chapter, stay tuned for more tales of romance. Until we meet again, may your days be filled with passion and just a touch of magic.